the NHS data scandal now, which is something that I actually wasn't particularly aware of. I mean, I'd seen the headlines, but I didn't quite understand it until I looked it up this week. And on the 23rd of June, everyone's data from their consultations with GPs will be put onto a database and could be available to anyone who wants to see it. I put a survey out for Labour Grassroots to find out what people knew about this development, and it's quite interesting to see. So I'll show you the survey results, and then I'm going to speak to one of the people who answered the survey as well. Now, what we have is this one here. This first question: are you aware of government plans to share GP records of patients to a database? 80% are aware of it, and this is quite an interesting conclusion from this one. Where did you hear about the government's plans with NHS data? If you look at that, 2% heard about this from their GP, and that's where the data is coming from. To think that only 2% heard from their GP, I mean, social media has been a blessing in this particular case. Have you opted out? Still, at this date, 63% have not opted out of this. So there's still quite a lot of people who need to do that, and we need to find out how to do that. And I'm going to speak to an expert on that after this. Would you be less willing to visit the GP if you knew that information about your consultation was being shared on a database? 57% of people would be less willing to visit their GP. I think that's pretty dangerous, to think that people are actually not going to go for their checkup if there's something they need looking at because they're worried it will be shared. And finally, do you think Labour should earnestly campaign against this? The key to that is the word earnest. You can always say something quite quietly, but you really have to make more noise. And I don't think Labour's made any noise on this, but we'll speak about that as well. To start this, I'd like to speak to Rudy. Are you there, Rudy?
I am.
Ludi, sorry, Ludi. Now, you answered this survey. What do you feel about this? Have you opted out of the NHS data?
I haven't yet, but I think I'm going to. I mean, none of this is new, and I come to it from a group you'll love, the Radical Statistics Group, which has been keeping an eye on this kind of thing for nearly 50 years. But it's given all the data from GPs to a central store, if it's NHS, is in itself not a terrible idea if it's then going to improve health, but it's purely part of privatisation here, because the intention is to sell that data to inform the hundreds of health apps that then shape the service, and that's probably the key danger. So we're getting used to now, aren't we? The video interviews, a screening online by some computer questionnaire, the automated diagnosis that is going to continue, and they're all private contracts. It's a bit like the Uberization of healthcare and healthcare itself. Now, just sort of one other thing that I'm particularly concerned with is that privatisation isn't just about Company X providing a service for cash and then deserting it when it's no longer profitable for them. It's about providing service X rather than service Y that may be better for us, but is less profitable for them. And so it's taking responsibility away for our own health from both the NHS staff and ourselves. And that's really insidious, but that's just what capitalism does, isn't it?
Okay, well, look, thank you. Now I'm going to speak to Dr. Bob Gill, who's written the NHS Heist. Are you there, Dr. Bob?
Hi, yes, Crispin, I'm here. Yeah.
Great to see you. No, yeah, that survey was quite alarming to me, that people would feel unwilling to see their GP if they thought that their data was being shared. I mean, I probably would, to be honest, if there's something that I felt was particularly worrying that I didn't want people to know about. Why would I go to the GP if I could try and find a way around it elsewhere? And there's a lack of awareness from 20% of people. So there is definitely a need for that to get out there, the information, and also to find out that only 2% found out from their GP is pretty alarming. Can you tell us more about the whole plan, and also how we can opt out, and what you think this is all about behind what the government is saying?
Yeah, so we need to think about the NHS in terms of how big business think about the NHS. They see it as a series of assets. You have the land and the buildings, which are being flogged off to the private sector, to property developers. You have the data, which has been called the new gold or the new oil, which is a massive asset. Now, what the government is proposing to do is not sell it, but give it away. This is something that's already been valued at around £10 billion. We have no idea what the potential future commercial value of all this data might be. So to give away a public asset to rapacious big tech corporations, which are very lightly regulated, which are already involved in nefarious activity. We saw with the Cambridge Analytica scandal how they were using user data to try and micro advertise to them and influence their voting. So they've been caught subverting democracy. The last thing we want is to give them control over our data. And what is afoot? You've got to look at the timing. They picked a time when GPs were at their busiest. They also picked a fight with GPs to say you must do face-to-face consultations, which we were doing anyway, and a very short time scale. So they've been very opportunistic, very cynical. They're dressing it up as research. It's nothing of the sort. It's a gift to the data companies. And that's what, it's shocking that this has happened in the dark. Patients and people need to give informed consent. Where has the information been? The information we've had has been very limited and misleading. This should be all over the news. Everybody should be given a lot of time to think about it and be told the truth about the commercial uses of their data. And let's not forget, this is the most sensitive information. Your sexual health, your mental health, very intimate details you pass on to your GP. Now, rightly so, once that is breached, the trust is breached, people will be reluctant to come to their GP, or they may say to their GP, please do not put this on my record. So we're going to end up corrupting the value of the doctor-patient relationship. And, sometimes people will withhold very important medical information, which will lead to a misdiagnosis. So this is a breach of trust, potentially dangerous for patients, and is being railroaded through, not for public benefit, but for the profit of these big corporations.
Yeah, I mean, how do we actually? The other thing is, what normally people have to opt in to something, and as consent, but this is where you have to opt out. It seems a bit like the wrong way round, isn't it? I mean,
well, absolutely. It's not only the wrong way around. It's made very difficult. So we're talking about IT and the future and all these technical advances. How do you opt out? You've got to hand in a piece of paper to your GP. You couldn't make it up. It's a totally crazy system. They've made it very difficult to do, very short timescales. The best place for people to find out more about this is from a group called Med Confidential. And the other group doing good work on this are Open Democracy, who put out a very good article summarizing the risks and also a link to the opt-out form. So it's made very cumbersome. The other interesting thing about your survey, which I wasn't totally surprised by, was the 2% of GPs telling their patients. Now, I'm in that 2%. I've not only been telling my patients, I've been printing the forms off for them. If they've come along for any reason, we're telling them. And patients coming for their vaccinations, we've been giving them forms and encouraging them to opt out. So yeah, a very tedious, low-tech, obscure way of opting out by design, because the government doesn't want any obstruction to their plans to give away our data.
Right. So yeah, it was the 23rd of June is the date. So it's not very long away. We'll have to do some more to promote this and get the word out. I just wanted to ask you about Labour's front bench and what they're saying about this. I have looked through John Ashworth's Twitter, and I can't see any kind of emergency in there about this. Why is Labour not making more noise about this?
Well, I'm afraid, you've got to be in a coma not to realise that the Labour leadership has drifted back into neoliberalism. The head of media for Labour, the comms, the director of communications, is a former healthcare lobbyist. John Ashworth, when he was within the Corbyn shadow team, was very, very weak on privatisation of the NHS. I've interviewed him. His interview was so weak, I didn't use it. He said nothing useful. I'd certainly encourage people to watch my film, The Great NHS Heist, which lays out the 13 years that New Labour assisted the privatisation. So why would it change course now? There was a brief window under Corbyn where we actually heard the word privatisation. We weren't hearing it before. And I think that's one of the big reasons that he came under such assault and such, the whole establishment was against him, because he may well have reversed some of this privatisation. So the Labour shadow team are very weak. There is some good news. There is a potential legal challenge being led by a group called Foxglove. Interestingly enough, the Conservative David Davis is very strong on this, wanting to protect people's confidentiality. So he's part of that group, as are the National Pensioners Association, Open Democracy I mentioned before. So the resistance is coming from the grassroots. It's not coming from Labour, and this is to Labour's eternal shame. Right.
I mean, we hear this every week on this show with different stories, different issues. It's shocking. We'll try and we should do another show before the 23rd to try to get more people to campaign and pass the word about this, because there still says on the survey 20% don't know about it. I would imagine that might be higher outside the group that I surveyed, who are not really politically savvy. So
yeah, as a sort of rule of just a sort of anecdotal, the people who I'm telling, my patients who I'm telling about this, the vast majority don't know. They haven't got a clue, because they're not seeing it on the BBC News or the ITV News. So, we're a select bunch on social media. We're politically aware, we're politically active, so we're going to hear about this stuff. But the general population, I think the majority, haven't got a clue about what's going on. And it's up to us, and, thank you for your work you're doing, but it's up to us to cascade this out as quick as possible.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, there's people putting their hands up to speak, but we don't really have time on this show. But we will come back to this. I think we should do a whole hour or hour and a half on this and really get the word out.
Can I give you just a parting thought for a future program? This is one aspect of patient data. The other aspect of patient data is what's happening within the NHS and the control being exerted by a private health insurance company called United Health, which, if the health bill goes through early part of next year, will be giving our data and decision making on whether we get treatment or not over to an American insurance company. Now that needs a whole program to cover, and I'm happy to come and talk to you anytime about it.
Fantastic. Not what's happening, but that you might come on is fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Bob.